Premier League Predictor Game Week 4 is here, but Game Week 3, well, was probably the most unsuccessful for all of us. That's right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Premier League Predictor. If you don't know how this works, the rules are on the screen right now. Check it out. Without further ado, though, let's get into it. So, as I've just said, Game Week 3 was probably the hardest one to get any points in. We get a point for a correct result and 5 points for a correct score. Our game week total was 2. We got 2 results correct, which was the Spurs game and the Bournemouth game versus Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal were always going to win that, and Spurs managed to see off Wolves. Not as convincing as we put it. They only won 1-0, but yeah, apart from that, unbelievable scenes in the Premier League this week. We had Newcastle drawing against champions Man City. We had Leeds beating Chelsea after some tragic goalkeeping by Mendy. And we had a pretty nice game on Monday night as well. Manchester United beating Liverpool in a thrilling 2-1 win at Old Trafford. That was probably my pick of the bunch. I'm not going to lie. I sat there with Ben, who also works on this series and is in the comments doing his predictions all the time. And yeah, he's a Liverpool fan. I'm a United fan. It was a good night had by all. That does mean we only got 2 points though this game week, and it puts our season total up to 19. Let's see in the next screen how you guys did with your predictions. Remember, guys, you can get involved in Premier League Predictor by making sure you've made your predictions in the comment of this video before the game week starts. We'll be looking at the game week 4 fixtures shortly, but let's take a look at how you guys did in game week 3. Hugo managed to get 12 points. 2 correct scorelines and 2 correct results. Stuyben got 7 points, 1 correct scoreline and 2 correct results. Finch, Doge and Ben also got 6 points, 1 score, 1 result each. Wilf, myself and Jossel were much further down the listings. It was a hard week to get any points. I've still not scored very well in any game week, so I'm going to have to try and pull my socks up this week. But yeah, if you want to get your name up on this scoreboard, all you've got to do is predict your game week 4 results in the comments of this video. I'll tally up your scores and hopefully you'll get yourself in first place for the next video. So here we are with the game week 4 predictions. Remember, guys, get yours in the comments right now to be involved. So the first game is between Southampton and Manchester United. Now, United obviously got that incredible win against Liverpool. Will give them a slight insurgence of confidence maybe, and maybe it's a little bit to do with Erik ten Hag finally finding out which team actually suits him best. Southampton did get a win up against Leicester, which is a very good result for them, but I don't think that is the same as what United did. They went from losing to Brighton and Brentford to beating Liverpool. Like, that transformation in a week is mental. And if you add in Casemiro into that Manchester United lineup instead of McTominay, it's only going to get better. Like, I just can't see Manchester United dropping points here. Therefore, I am going to go for a Manchester United win. I am going to go for 3-0. I think that the sort of momentum that Manchester United are going to get from that Liverpool game is going to get them the points against Southampton. I think after that, you're going to see United start to struggle a little bit again once people kind of let the hype die down a little bit. But for now, Man United very much on the hype train. Next up, we do have Brentford versus Everton. Brentford actually lost to incredible Fulham at the weekend. Like, Fulham seem to be doing an absolute madness at the moment. We'll talk about those in a bit. But they did actually lose to them. And Everton got a draw against Nottingham Forest, which I think is a very good result for Everton. Nottingham Forest having a very strong start to the season, so I don't think that's a bad point to have gotten at all. But I do think Brentford's squad is still better than Everton's. I think Fulham have had an absolutely freak start, and that's why they managed to beat Brentford at the weekend. I think Brentford are probably going to get the win here, but it's going to be a lot closer than the United-Southampton game. I'm going to go for 1-0 to Brentford. It's going to be tight. It'll be a mistake at the back or something like that for Everton that cost them the goal. I think Brentford at home as well. It's a tough place to go, and I think they'll grind out that win. Next up, we have 2 teams that got surprise victories last weekend. We had Brighton that managed to beat West Ham, and Leeds that absolutely demolished Chelsea. Leeds ran a long way against Chelsea. They put so many kilometres into their boots. It was ridiculous. And I think that is something that you're really going to see from this Leeds squad. Obviously got quite a American base there, with the manager being American, a couple of players coming in being American. American, and I think that that's just that work ethic that American sport teams have. If you run more than the other team, there's a chance you're going to perform better than them too. I think that's the mentality they've got there. Brighton, of course, standard discussion around Brighton, isn't it? Is that they're a very difficult team to break down, and they're very kind of dedicated and what's the word I'm looking for? Like a resilient team. They're not going to give up their positions and the tactics that they've set out to use. So for me, I think again this is going to be a tough one to call. I'm actually going to go for a draw between those two, but because they're such strong teams, I think there's going to be a lot of scoring involved. So I'm going to go for 2 goals for Brighton and 2 goals for Leeds. A 2-2 draw there in a game where I think it's going to be difficult. I think there's going to be, a lot of goals going in, but equally it's going to be hard to break each other down. It's going to be a crazy game, end-to-end action. Next up, we have Chelsea and Leicester, 2 teams that had disappointing weekends last weekend. Obviously, Leicester getting the defeat against Southampton, and Chelsea getting destroyed by Leeds. Now, which team's going to bounce back better? I think probably Chelsea. They've got the better squad depth. They've got the better squad in general. And Leicester have got this massive Fofana business looming over them. Is he going to go to Chelsea? Is he not? He's currently training with the under-23s. He's been exiled from the squad until the transfer window's over. It's a weird one, and I think there's maybe a bit of hostility within the camp because of that potential transfer happening. Chelsea should have quite an optimistic changing room at the moment because they've got a lot of potential players coming in, and maybe only really Pulisic, who's been linked to Man United, I think this week, should really have anything to whinge about within the Chelsea camp. But yeah, that potential Fofana deal I think is going to take a big distraction out of that Leicester team. That squad's going to be a little bit fragmented in my opinion. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Chelsea win. I think that it's just going to be a hard-fought game still because the squads are reasonably even and their morale and their form is reasonably low at the moment. But for me, you can't look past how much a potential transfer can completely fracture a changing room. And I think that that's going to happen massively with Leicester here. Next up, Liverpool versus Bournemouth. How did Bournemouth get on last week? Oh, they got thrashed by Arsenal. Well, Liverpool equally got thrashed by No, it wasn't a thrashing. They got beat by Manchester United. But I think that Liverpool have got enough to kind of come back here. Bournemouth came up against an incredible Arsenal team, and it's nothing to be ashamed of getting beaten by them. I think personally they're going to be challenging this year against Man City. But I do think that Liverpool will have seen what happened to them against Manchester United, and I think Klopp will have put them through their paces this week. We'll get them back to the way they should be, and hopefully they'll bounce back from what was quite an embarrassing performance against United. It wasn't necessarily Man United played well, it was Liverpool weren't at the pace at all. Like, you got flipping Van Dijk doing a Liam Gallagher pose when he's trying to defend and stuff. It was a little bit embarrassing for them. But I do think they'll bounce back against the Bournemouth team that really shouldn't be able to compete with Liverpool, in my opinion. I've gone for 2-0, a very convincing result, a very straightforward result for Liverpool here. I will be shocked if they don't manage it. If they don't manage to win against Bournemouth, I will be surprised to say the least. Next up, we have Crystal Palace versus Man City at Manchester. I'm unsure about this because obviously Crystal Palace had a good win up against Aston Villa. Patrick Vieira seems to have been able to put the sticky pre-season behind him, and they're starting to get some really good performances. Obviously, Manchester City had an unbelievable game against Newcastle. I watched it in a pub in the middle of Birmingham, of all places. It was, the atmosphere was buzzing because that game was incredible. End to end, Newcastle didn't sit back. That is what I think a lot of teams need to learn against Man City this season. Take it from that Newcastle game. If you sit back and try and defend against City, they're going to pick you apart and score loads of goals, which is kind of what happened to Newcastle after they went a couple of goals up. They did sit back a little bit. If you take the game to City, anything can happen. If you take the game to them, 2 things can happen basically. You can either put so much pressure on that you do eventually nick your goal, or you're going to get undone on the break. But I don't think that's really what City have got. Apart from Haaland through the middle, their counter-attack isn't that strong. Where they're strongest is when they've got the ball in position and they're just pinging it around your players until they find an opening. If you take the game to them, you've got more of a chance of getting a result. Crystal Palace need to really put that in place here, but I don't think they're going to have enough, in my opinion. I think that City are probably going to learn from that Newcastle game, become a little bit more regimented at the back, and maybe try and hold possession a bit better than they did against Newcastle. So I think for me, it's going to be a Manchester City win, and I'm going to go for 2-1. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, but I think that even though Crystal Palace will perform well, I think City will still be able to grind out a win after what was a very tiring game against Newcastle. I'm sorry, Fulham. The dream is over. You've had your time in the limelight now. You're coming up against a big gun. And that big gun is the Gunners themselves, Arsenal. I do not see Fulham getting anything from this game. As much as Fulham have done some incredible things over the last few weeks and really grinded some results out against the likes of Brentford, I don't think they've got what it takes to take on Arsenal. This is a well-oiled Mikel Arteta machine. Odegaard's been incredible in the midfield. Saka's been decent on the right. Gabriel Jesus through the middles, finishing everything. Martinelli's doing bits in there as well. I just think this Arsenal team are a little bit special. I think they're personally going to go on to potentially challenge for the title this season. So for me, Fulham have got no chance. I think this is going to be as convincing as previous Arsenal games. I'm going for 3-0. I just see Arsenal scoring goals for fun, and if you've got their players in your fantasy football team, you're sorted. Because at the moment, they're just scoring all of my fantasy football points, which, by the way, do not look at my team. It's embarrassing the points I'm getting each week. Next up, we have Aston Villa versus West Ham. Aston Villa, of course, lost to Crystal Palace. West Ham lost to Brighton. West Ham have had a poor start to the season. Unbelievably poor. I thought this was their year to push for top 4, push for top 6 at least, and really put some pressure on the top 6-7 teams in our league. West Ham were going to be one of them, in my opinion, until the season started, and they've just been awful. They've been absolutely shocking. They've had some really bad results. Aston Villa are equally struggling at the moment with Stevie G at the helm. I think that he's arguably getting a little bit more time because the media like him, fans like him, players like him. He's a well-liked person within the league in general. So I think that he's probably getting a little bit more leeway than a normal manager would in his situation. I don't see any team really getting points here, which is hard because neither of them are performing particularly well. I'm going to go for 0-0. This is my board draw of the week. Aston Villa versus West Ham. The claret and blue clash is going to be a board draw 0-0. I just don't see either team having the firepower to win here. Next up, we have Wolves at home to Newcastle. Now, Newcastle for me are the team that are in form at the moment, along with Arsenal. The result against City was incredible. We've already discussed it. Wolves did lose 1-0 to Spurs. A little bit unlucky there. It's just a very high-firing Spurs team. The firepower they've got up top is obviously well and above Wolves's. Wolves, I think, will get a goal here, but I don't think they're going to win. I think you're going to see a pretty convincing Newcastle win. Eddie Howe is going to be manager of the season, and Mikel Arteta maybe. Arteta or Eddie Howe, one of the two. But either way, I just see Newcastle getting a win here. I think these sort of games for Newcastle need to become standard wins. They can't have this being a game that they might win. It has to be a game they win. That is the be-all and end-all of it now. There is no ifs or buts or coconuts. They just need to get the points in these sort of ties. The likes of Forest, Wolves, games against Villa, Fulham, Crystal Palace, Everton, Brentford, Brighton, Leeds, Leicester, Bournemouth. All those sort of teams, Newcastle need to think, this is 3 points. As soon as they do that, they can start competing for European places. Until they make these sort of games a straightforward win, they can't. So 3-1 to Newcastle for me. And I think that, yeah, they just need to turn these games into straightforward wins now to really get the ball rolling on their kind of rise to the top of the Premier League. Our final game of this weekend is Forest versus Spurs. So for me, these teams are both doing reasonably well at the moment. Obviously, Forest got only a point against Everton when arguably they should have done better. And Spurs did get a win against Wolves. But for me, I think this is going to be a tight game. I think after seeing what it was like to go for a team to go to Nottingham Forest 2 weeks ago now, they played at home for the first time in the Premier League in a long time. That atmosphere was incredible. It was up there with Newcastle. It was just one of those atmospheres you don't want to walk into. And I think Spurs might struggle when they walk into that atmosphere. The fans at Forest were incredible in their first home Premier League game for a long time. I just think they're going to do the same. I think they're going to have a really good game. They're really going to grind out a result here. This is my surprise of the week, because I think a lot of people would go, Spurs win, easy doors. But for me, I'm going to go for 1-1. I think it's going to be really tight, and it might even be that Forest get a goal and then have to defend, and Spurs just grind out a point by the end of the game due to the fact of having Kane, Son, etc. So for me, 1-1 draw. I think that's my surprise of the week. I just have a feeling. So here are my game week 4 Matt's predictions. We have Southampton losing 3-0 to Manchester United. Brentford winning 1-0 at home to Everton. Brighton and Leeds drawing 2-2. Chelsea winning 2-1 against Leicester City. We have Liverpool winning 2-0 against Bournemouth. Man City beating Crystal Palace 2-1. Arsenal getting a convincing 3-0 win against Fulham. Aston Villa versus West Ham is our board draw this week. Wolves are losing 3-1 to Newcastle at home. And Forest are going to get a point up against Spurs. Remember guys, if you want to be involved in this series, all you've got to do is put your predictions in the comments right now. The amount of people that have been getting involved has been really humbling. So thank you so much to everyone that has been getting involved. It's been making me feel absolutely brilliant. And yeah, please like this video as well and subscribe, because it just helps my channel out. And this series is by far my most fun to record. But that is the end for this episode. Let me know what you think of my predictions as well in the comments down below. I think I've made some pretty ballsy predictions there, especially with the Tottenham game against Nottingham Forest, and the United 3-0 win at Southampton is a very interesting one indeed. We'll have to see how those results go. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hit a like on it if you have enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you in the next one.